Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Ultimate Comics Podcast. I'm your host, Nabeel Gaber, or I should say,
And,
I'm one of your hosts, Nabeel Gaber.
and I'm the other host, Josh Kang.
And this is a podcast where we talk about Ultimate Marvel, an imprint of Marvel Comics that began in the year 2000, an attempt to reimagine and modernize Marvel's characters and its universe for the 21st century. So, for example, we have Ultimate Spider Man, Ultimate X Men, Ultimate Fantastic Four, just new takes on classic Marvel characters. And Josh and I have been reading through these series, a handful of issues at a time, every episode, discussing them, saying what we like, what we don't like, what holds up, what doesn't age so well, and how Ultimate Marvel has had an influence on the movies, TV, comics, even like mainstream comics, all sorts of media for Marvel and for superheroes in general. And so this week we are back to Ultimate Spider Man. We've been reading issues 60 through 65. This is the Ultimate Carnage arc.
It's also one of the Ultimate versions because there's going to be another one. Versions of the Clone Saga.
Yeah, no, I was definitely going to bring that up, is what I thought when I was reading this arc, because even though this is Ultimate Carnage, it does have its own spin on things and its own twist to the story that's very different than the Carnage story in the original comics, and a lot of that has a lot of similarities to the Clone Saga. And we'll get into that as we go on. First things first, Josh, what were your overall thoughts on these issues? What'd you think?
I really like this. You and I, of course, as usual, we're talking about this before, and I don't think I emphasized to you enough. I really like this arc. It was a new spin on things. You get a lot of the stuff from the older comics in, but
Mm-hmm.
it's such a new and fresh spin on the events and the characters that I actually would say I think this is my favorite, or one of my favorite Ultimate Spider-Man arcs so far.
Dang. All right.
Yeah, I really like this. It's like reading something fresh and new, but you still get the old oomph in it. You know.
Yeah, I love that classic oomph. And I
Uh-huh.
feel like that does sum up Ultimate Spider Man pretty well. I know we've said this probably a lot on this podcast already, but Ultimate Spider Man does have that feeling of you get a fresh new spin on things, but it also feels like classic, almost timeless Spider Man stories. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Josh. I really liked this arc. I thought it ups the stakes more. It's very intense. It's engaging. I think my one gripe would just generally be it did feel like at times we were kind of retreading old ground from the Ultimate Venom arc that came a while ago. Like it's been a minute for sure, but I definitely thought, all right, we've kind of been here before. It didn't totally ruin my enjoyment of the story. I thought it was well written and really well done, but I was definitely like, okay, part of this feels like old news, but we'll get into that more as we talk about these issues. A lot of big moments come out of this one.
Oh yeah. I would also say this is Ultimate Spider-Man's twist on the spoilers ahead, but you'll know the spoilers any within an hour. It's also an Ultimate Spider-Man twist on the death of Gwen Stacy. And I think my problem, if I had to have a problem with Ultimate Spider-Man, was that it was too cautious with how it took a lot of its stuff. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
this is the most bold in the how much because this is like three 616 arcs put together, but it put the biggest twist on each of those three than any other Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man has on 616 story. So
No, totally.
yeah,
I think there might have been even more than three classic Spider-Man stories squished together in this arc. I'm sure we'll
yeah,
get into this more as we talk about it. But yeah, they do take a lot of big, bold, new takes on these characters and the stories and all the twists and turns. And yeah, they do. I mean, we're already talking about these issues, so it's not a huge spoiler. But yeah, they do the death of Ultimate Gwen here, and it is pretty different than the original,
yeah,
as we'll talk about. But I thought the way it was handled was gut wrenching and heartbreaking and a
yeah.
very well told story.
It, there's another two factors with Ultimate Spider-Man. This arc, Ultimate Marvel is not new anymore, ish. It's been
Mhm.
around for almost half a decade at this point. I think this was released around 2004, 2005. So it probably was like it has been around for quite a bit. So the writers, the publishers are more willing to take risks because I feel they've taken big risks with X-Men, Avengers, and Fantastic Four. But for Spider-Man, that was like their safety. That was like their safety thing. But now they're willing to take more risks. But also, Carnage. I've You might disagree with me on this, but I kind of agree. I've heard Carnage has always been more of like a not a very serious character in the comics. He's very much a character used to make money, to get all the kids and the fanboys all jizzed up and ready, going, yeah,
I'm sorry, what?
to get the fanboys all riled up.
No, what was the term you used before that?
It's a common term.
I don't think that's the term.
Fine, I said jizzed up.
Yeah, I think you meant jazzed up.
Tomato, potato.
That's a very different meaning.
It's the same thing. The whole point is that Carnage has always been like he's a rip-off character of Venom explicitly. He's there to make money off of Venom, like, and he's there to get like the fans all riled up. But I feel like now he is such an established character that you could just throw him in. He's in Punisher stories. He's in like Deadpool stories now. But
Yeah.
his Carnage is there to just get like the fanboys all excited.
Carnage is just mainly there in the main comics to be this irredeemable psycho villain.
Hmm.
Carnage in the main Marvel universe, his name is Cletus Cassidy. Before he became Carnage, he was just a serial killer, like a psychopath. Then he got the offspring symbiote of Venom. So the Venom symbiote had a child essentially that
Yeah,
became the Carnage symbiote that bonded with Cletus Cassidy. And so the two of them fed off of each other and he became this violent, even more violent, irredeemable, psychotic Joker like villain, really. And he's not, as you can tell, a very complex villain. He's not one that really has too much depth to him. He's just there to be the irredeemable psycho that they have Venom fight because Venom became very popular very fast and then turned from villain to more of an anti hero. And that's who you throw him up against. Venom has a moral code, Venom has a conscience. Warped and twisted as it may seem and may be, he's not really the most stable guy, Venom, but he sees himself as a protector of the innocent. So it's easy to just put him up against someone who has no conscience and has no moral code. So I like the new take they have, bottom line, on Ultimate Carnage in Ultimate Spider-Man because I think that's a character you can take some risks with and make some bigger swings with because Carnage in and of himself isn't the most complex character, and I don't think you're losing a whole lot by changing to suit the narrative of Ultimate Spider-Man.
yeah. And I feel the best character stories with Carnage have not been with Cletus Cassidy. It's always been with a completely different take on the symbiote, like the Spider Carnage story in the animated series.
Oh yeah.
You just get the red monster, and you just have fun with that concept. Or the Ultimate Spider-Man video game, or even the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, which, while bad, did have some strong episodes where the
Mm-hmm.
Spider Carnage was just, what if you injected the symbiote into Peter Parker directly?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there have been good storylines, like you're saying. I mean, not necessarily like groundbreaking storylines. I'm a sucker for Maximum Carnage. That's big crossover from the '90s,
yeah.
which I agree is excessively '90s. But I mean, I thought it was a lot of fun. I never played the old arcade game that I'm sure a lot of '90s kids will like rave about, and it sounded like it was amazing. But I just love it's a fun crossover where Spider-Man teams up with Venom and a bunch of heroes like Captain America and Iron Fist and Firestar and Black Cat and all these guys. They team up against Carnage and his family of psychos, and it's just a good time. It's fun. I
Yeah,
don't know. I enjoy it.
yeah,
There's Absolute Carnage, which came during the Donny Cates run on Venom, and I
mhm.
thought that was a good storyline that served an important purpose in the Donny Cates Venom run. And
I
then, of course, there was Go Down Swinging was the final arc in Dan Slott's Spider-Man run, where the Green Goblin bonds with the Carnage symbiote. and becomes the Red Goblin. And that was a fun time. That was awesome. I love that
Uh,
storyline. Before we dive further down the rabbit hole, let's just dive right into these issues. Ultimate Spider-Man number 60. We open on, there's a nightmare. We can't tell whose it is at first. It just opens on this big splash page of the Lizard attacking Spider-Man. This is a flashback, obviously, to when the Lizard appeared in Ultimate Marvel Team Up, notably not in the main Ultimate Spider-Man title, but that was also written by Bendis, so it doesn't matter. But the Lizard in this nightmare is like attacking Spider-Man and then flees and goes to attack Kurt Connors' son, Billy. For those of you who've forgotten, the Lizard is Kurt Connors, so he's basically going to attack his son, and Billy wakes up in time to get just viciously, it's this horrific scene of, you can't see it explicitly, but you can tell he's just getting ripped to shreds by the Lizard. And just as things get the most intense, that's when Kurt Connors wakes up and it's revealed he was the one having the nightmare about being the Lizard and horrifically murdering his son. And
kind of like the Hulk in that, like, it's a horrid time for him to become one or the other.
yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
He has a lot of similarities to the Hulk in that way. He can't control his transformations, and he's scared about what will happen if he ever becomes the Lizard again.
And we also get our second view of, like, the Lizard's new design for Ultimate Marvel. One that, like, for some reason has not carried on over to other Marvel properties, despite the fact this one is a very distinct look.
Mm-hmm.
Rhino has another different look in Ultimate Marvel, but that has carried on to, like, the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I'm surprised Lizard's this design has not. It's not the green one, it's like the basilisk-looking thing.
Yeah, I think the green's just too good.
I like this one better, though, to be honest, but
it's interesting.
Yeah. It's
so
naked.
we get a look we get a look at what Kurt's life is like now. We catch up with him, really, and you can tell by the state of his room, like, it's a mess. There's a pizza box on the floor with, like, partially eaten pizza. You got beer bottles everywhere. Like, there's lab stuff thrown all over the floor.
Because he's a divorced guy, which is, like, that's what happens when you become divorced, like I am. You just
he's just like you, Josh.
I know. You either move back in with your mom, or the perfect one to bring it back to Spider-Man is Spider-Man in the animated movie Spider-Verse, where you're just, like, eating pizza in the shower. You grow a gut. You drink beer a lot.
Yeah, and you sit around and we watch nature documentaries on seahorses.
I watch nature documentaries on penguins, man. They made for life.
Do you sit in the shower and just cry like Peter B. Parker?
Not anymore. It's been years.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's been years since my divorce. I am also not really divorced, by the way. No. But I know the feeling.
Yeah. It's pretty much the same.
Yeah, but he calls his ex-wife and she's with a different guy. You know?
Yeah. Well, he calls and he's, like, asking about his son Billy, and she's like, "Don't you know what time it is?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't realize it was that late." And she's like, "Are you drunk?" And he's like, "No, I'm not drunk." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't realize," which you can tell there's another guy on the other end of the phone line. So it's pretty rough. And I'm like, "Paul, is that you on the other end of the line?"
Yeah. I don't even Ultimate Paul, man. And, you know, like, I know
is it gonna happen?
I know that feeling, Dr. Connors, because it's happened to me. Also, my hot take: they should have Pete Davidson play Ultimate Paul, and his just with Zendaya, just to rub it into Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It would redeem Paul finally. MCU Paul.
That would be hilarious, and I would totally watch that movie.
Yeah. Look, it's every guy's nightmare to find out their partner or their ex is with Pete Davidson. We all know it.
That's true. Yeah. That's just a big slap in the face.
I know. You wake up, you're covered in sweat, and go, Pete Davidson! I mean, Paul! Same thing. No wonder Kanye went crazy.
But then Dr. Connors is also looking at a letter from Stark Enterprises, and it's saying that the funding for his research is going to be pulled if he doesn't present results. And what's also cool is that it's a little fun Easter egg as you see that the letter is signed by Jim Rhodes. war machine for
Mm-hmm.
the 5 people on Earth who are not in the know and haven't like watched any of the MCU. I mean, you'd probably have to hear Rhodey to recognize it, but yeah, it's a fun little Easter egg let's drop there.
Yeah, so he has to present research, which is like a common a problem amongst academics that you're constantly producing, and
Mm-hmm.
also like you're divorced and you're now getting pressure from your job. You already got kicked out of the house. You lost the kids. You found out your ex is with Pete Davidson or Paul. Just stress
It's
on
a
this
rough
guy.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just and there's like this is like if you have like a addiction problem or if you're an alcoholic or if you even have like cold sores or like diabetes, all this stress could make your health problems worse. And with Kurt's case, all the stress could turn him into the Lizard, just like this will
Yeah.
probably turn Bruce Banner into the Hulk.
Yeah, that's a pretty apt metaphor, I would say. Yeah. All
Yeah,
the stress is not good for his health.
yeah.
And if that's the case, then it's not good for the health of the rest of New York City.
He's not. I don't think so because except in the old Amazing Spider-Man movie, he's not really a threat to New York City. What? Like he eats like some jogger every once in a while. Like not the biggest threat in the world.
It's basically like letting a serial killer on the loose.
Yeah, like Carnage.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But speaking of misery, then Spider Man is swinging around doing his usual internal monologue, just thinking about how cold and rainy it is and how he wants to be home. But he's swinging around because he's following the police to there's a hostage situation at a museum, and the hostages are being held by a Daredevil villain, actually,
Mm-hmm.
Gladiator, Melvin
I,
Potter in his
I
Gladiator gear.
I didn't even know this was a gladiator. This was a Daredevil villain.
It's so funny. I don't even remember him appearing here like when I read this years ago, but it's so cool. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Gladiator."
Yeah,
And he's like delusional and he's going on about the Roman Empire and stuff
he's
as he
going
always
on
does,
about the Chinese Empire.
which is interesting because he's wearing like he's got the Roman motif going on. So he's
Yeah,
kind of got his wires crossed.
I told Nabeel this before we recorded. He's talking about he wants the ashes of Narachi. That is the same ashes of the same person that Indiana Jones and the gangsters were talking about in the second Indiana Jones movie. By the way,
It's a pretty fun Easter egg as
yeah,
well.
it's also a real person. Narachi is a real person, by the way, too. Or he was a real person. He's been dead
Yeah.
for like 500 years, but
R.I.P. Yeah.
yeah. Rest in peace, man.
We lost a real one. I have no idea. I haven't
Oh,
read the history books on him.
he's a conqueror, just like he's a horse guy.
I'm sure his funeral was glorious.
Yeah, Spider-Man beats him though. The police get involved, but Spider-Man does actually get injured. He gets cut.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a rough fight because I think you see Spider-Man kind of get overconfident here. He's joking, he's mocking, and he
Mm-hmm.
kind of gets caught off guard. And yeah, that's when he gets cut pretty badly. And it's a pretty cool fight because you get to see Peter get a little desperate. He's like, I just got to end this now because this guy's actually very dangerous and like unhinged.
Yeah.
And he just beats the crap out of Gladiator.
The thing with Ultimate Spider-Man is that unlike 616 Spider-Man, who like he has difficulty every once in a while. Ultimate Spider-Man does get his ass kicked or like
Because
does have difficulty. Like there's a lot of
he's just a kid.
Yeah, but there's a lot of 616 Spider-Man as a kid, like other than Doctor Octopus, generally won most of its fights pretty
Yeah.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ultimate Spider-Man does a better job all around just depicting him as a teenager and as
Yeah.
just a kid in over his head sometimes.
Yeah.
The original comics, I feel like it was more just Stan Lee and Steve Ditko just doing their best to figure out how a teenager would act and how a
Yeah.
teenager would be, but I think this is a little bit more realistic.
Yeah. But the other one I'm also thinking about is MCU Spider-Man, who I feel as far as like teenagers depictions of Peter Parker go, is a pretty good Spider-Man. And Tom Holland Spider-Man spends his first appearance beating the crap out of the Winter Soldier. So
Yeah, that's fair. But Tom Holland's still like best film depiction of the teenage Spider-Man that we've gotten. So
maybe it's because like he's actually under 20 when he started filming
yeah, he was not 30 years old like Tobey
it.
Maguire or Andrew Garfield when they filmed their
As
high school Spider-Man.
as a kid, I thought, oh man, this is how high schoolers look like. You look like a man. And when I got into
Yeah.
high school, I was like, I still look like a kid because I didn't realize because Spider-Man movies had tricked me that you don't look 30
Yeah.
when you're in high school.
Yeah, when you're like a sophomore in high school.
I thought like everyone's 6 feet tall, everyone's just has like distinguished cheekbones. No, like everyone's awkward. Your bones are in the wrong spot, and you're
They
either too
still look
fat or
like
too skinny.
babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You I, even High School Musical. Have you ever re-seen High School Musical as an adult?
Oh yeah.
They look they look like kids. They also look much younger than Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. I didn't know that as a kid, but
Yeah, they do. They look a
yeah,
lot younger than them.
yeah. I think Spider-Man is the one people remember as like the high school students are all like 30, obviously.
Yeah. And a lot of early 2000s teen movies too,
But
honestly.
but I feel I only remember Spider-Man to be honest. Spider-Man and Mean Girls.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a nice moment after the police arrive and they're like trying to like arrest Spider-Man, and one of the hostages defends him from the cops and is like, "No, he saved us. He's a hero." And even Captain DeWolf is there. Captain Jean DeWolf is
Yeah.
another important Spider-Man character. And she's like, "Yeah, back off, guys." And she even offers Peter medical attention. So it's nice to see not everyone hates him for a
Yeah.
change.
The cops are getting used to him.
Yeah, exactly. And like people are seeing like, no, he's actually helping people and like doing good things. But of course, Spider-Man is like, nah, I'm good, whatever. He's like,
Yeah.
gotta go, and he runs off into the rain. And he ends up seeking medical attention from Dr. Connors.
Because he goes like, you owe me one.
Yeah, and it's really funny because Doc Connors is like, listen, I'm not that kind of doctor. Like, I don't have a medical degree.
Which is funny because they're making fun of the triple Marvel comic doctors do everything. But it's double funny when you remember that in the Marvel comics, Dr. Connors is an actual like he's an actual medical school graduate in the
Yeah,
comics
in the
explicitly.
original. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't he lose his arm as like a medic in Vietnam or something?
Oh, yeah, he was a vet.
Yeah,
Yeah, in the original comics.
yeah. So I'm like, oh, that's such. I'm glad you guys, Marvel, you're making fun of the fact that not every doctor in Marvel comics has a medical degree, but you did it to the one character who does have a medical degree.
Yeah, seriously. Oh my gosh.
That's like poor Cart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But he's still able to do what he can. Meanwhile, they're making chit chat, and Peter's checking in on how Connors is doing with his symptoms and if he's feeling all right after being the lizard. And
yeah,
he's like, hey, at least you were trying to do something good when you first became the lizard. I know guys who have like intentionally turned themselves into monsters, and at least you were trying to do something noble.
like regrow
Uh,
limbs.
yeah. And Doc Connors is like, yeah, but miracles really are what we're looking for, and that happens once in a blue moon. And this
I
kind of like is all foreshadowing. This kind of like sets the tone for and the stage for what this story is going to be.
yeah.
So remember this, because this conversation is going to come back to bite everyone.
I do like how Peter Parker as so Spider-Man is unmasked during this scene and they're talking about it. And Kurt and Peter do bond over them being like mutually science geeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally.
Yeah. Like
Which is cool.
yeah. Which it's like of all the characters we've met so far that's not Peter's age, I feel so far he has the best relationship so far with Kurt.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
because they're both science nerds and they're both people who are interested in a lot of the same subjects and
yeah.
topics, and they can carry a conversation. Like, and Kurt realizes that Peter is smart,
Yeah.
and Peter looks up to and respects him, and he's one of the few people he can share with his secret.
Yeah.
So,
And I also feel like Kurt's so far is not trying to get one over on Spider-Man. He's also not trying to go like, oh, so legally you belong to Uncle Sam, buddy.
yeah, no. He's not like Nick Fury or Norman Osborn who's trying to take advantage of him or manipulate him in any way.
Yeah.
He's really just helping him.
And also, I think they both are kind of aware that they both have rough family lives.
Yeah, totally. I think they're both kind of going through it at this point, so they have kind of like parallel trajectories.
Yeah.
But as Peter swings off and leaves, Doc Connors, the issue ends with him examining, just out of curiosity, Peter's blood.
Yeah.
And he is like interesting. And this is a big yikes, uh-oh, this is not going to end well. This is a kind of foreboding
Mm-hmm.
cliffhanger here.
Is this the first time someone was interested in Peter's blood in Marvel? Because, like I know, like other than the ones where they always try to recreate Peter, or in the Clone Saga where they constantly are cloning Peter over and over again, like the only time I could think of someone being especially interested in Peter's blood is like the Amazing Spider-Man movie, the second Amazing Spider-Man movie, where they go like, "Oh, Peter's blood could possibly cure cancer." Is this like the first time we're getting like someone going, "I could use Peter's blood to cure a disease"? Or
I don't think so. Like, I couldn't say that for sure, so I don't want to assume or anything. But it
yeah.
is a big motif and a big thing that happens in, I feel like, a lot of superhero media too, generally, but also Spider-Man 2 especially, just the possibilities of someone's blood because they're this perfect specimen and this was a freak accident or a once in a lifetime success story. It's the same thing with like Captain America, right?
And
I'm
Wolverine.
trying,
But I
yeah,
get Captain America and Wolverine, but usually Peter's like, you're like, yeah, and I was like, well, his part spider, that's kind of gross. I want to avoid that.
well, there are some good things as we'll see and
Yeah.
benefits, but yeah, the next issue 61 opens with Peter's at home and he's moaning and he's groaning because he's got a bad fever. He's pretty sick from the last issue when he was just swinging around in the cold and the rain. And this is also just like a common Spider-Man trope, is like he's just a regular kid, so of course he's gonna get sick. He's gonna like, get the flu, even though he's a superhero. And Aunt May goes full mother on him and is like, nope, you're not going to school. You're burning up. And he's like, midterms. And she's like, not happening. And it's really funny because we see Gwen, who recently just learned Peter's secret as Spider-Man. She's leaning in and she's like, yeah, is this a cool Spider-Man thing? And
And then
he's
she
like,
sees how green he
no.
is. And
Yeah,
then it's like, oh,
yeah,
you're really green. You're not faking
yeah.
it.
So it's pretty funny. But then we cut to,
Ben Riley.
yeah, Ben Riley is a fun Easter egg for those who are not in the know. That is Peter Parker's clone in the
Slash brother.
main comics slash brother. Yeah,
Played by Andy Samberg in the second anime
yeah.
movie.
In Across the Spider Verse, yeah,
Yeah.
voiced by Andy Samberg. So he becomes the Scarlet Spider, and then later becomes his own Spider-Man when Peter retires in the original comics for a little bit. But anyways, Ben Riley is just a fun Easter egg because this is the name of Doc Connor's lab assistant, Ben Riley.
And he is obviously not Peter's clone. In this one, he looks completely different and is
Yeah,
older.
he's an adult.
Yeah.
And so Ben checks in on Doc Connors, and Connors is asleep, passed out in front of Peter's blood sample.
Common thing amongst divorced men. You just fall asleep on at work.
Yes, I wouldn't know, but sounds right.
Yeah.
Ben sees Peter's blood after a brief look, and he's like, "Oh, this is amazing!" And of course, Doc Connors wakes up in a panic, and he's like, "Oh, that's nothing. Don't look at that. Like, it's don't tell anyone about this, please. This isn't anything. It might not be." So he swears him to secrecy. And meanwhile, Peter is at home, and he's still sick, watching just beauty pageants, which is very funny. And he's like bored out of his mind.
He's watching girls in bikinis, and he goes like, "I don't even know what kids these days are doing."
Yeah. He's like, I don't understand this at all.
He gets a call from Kirk Connor saying like, "Hey, can I go to where you are?" And he goes like, "No, I'll just go where you are. I'm sick though." And it's like, which is an interesting thing. I'm like, so was this like 3-page sick story, like side quest, just to show that, just to give an excuse for Peter to go to Kirk Connors instead of being at school?
It might be. I feel like that was just to add in the classic Spidey trope of, oh, he's just a regular guy and he gets sick like everyone else, and he's got this going on top of everything else that's happening in his life. I feel like it's just a way to make it a little bit more realistic in that way.
Makes sense. So Peter goes to Kurt at some cafe or restaurant, and they talk over some coffee, as
Yes.
them New Yorkers say. But it's actually the most mature and reasonable so far conversation people have talked about Peter about his body because like both Osborn and Fury keep talking about I own you now because of these blood stuff, because of your fact your DNA is tampered with. But Kirk goes, look, I think we could do some interesting research on your body. This
Hmm.
could have large potential medical breakthroughs on Parkinson's, diabetes, Alzheimer's, which is also reminds me of that Spider-Man comic where he goes like, "But you could cure cancer," and he goes, "But I want to turn people into dinosaurs."
Yeah.
But it's the same thing where like if you think about it, genetically altering DNA is a big medical
Yeah.
breakthrough. And he says like, look, if this is nothing, it's nothing. But if this goes big, I'll split it with you 50-50.
Yeah. He's like, this could be a big deal. It might take years. Who knows if anything will come of it? It's pretty cool. He's asking for his informed consent on this, which I say it's pretty cool because at this point in time in Ultimate Spider Man, no one has asked for Peter's permission or informed consent to do anything with his genetics or his DNA or with him in general. If you look between Nick Fury and Norman Osborn and all the other adults in his life. So he's really just reaching out and he's like, listen, can you give me the permission and I can go in on this? And he says, it's our responsibility to see that something useful is done with this blood. And as soon as he says responsibility, with Mark Bagley's art, immediately you see Peter's reaction and you can see in his face, he's really hit by that. That's so
Yeah,
triggering for him. So, of course, he says yes.
yeah. It also, I know I just said it reminds me of the thing where it talks about dinosaurs, but also reminds me of like when one character sees the opportunity to turn people into dinosaurs, Peter immediately sees the opportunity to cure people of cancer,
Hmm.
and it's the same thing. He sees responsibility, like to do well with others. Like,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
totally.
there's something interesting because he's also used to all these characters wanting to understand his body and own him, and here's this guy saying, "No, like we have responsibility to do well for others. This is purely a humanitarian thing, and if we get rich, we should share the profits." This is the most respectful and yet consenting relationship he's had with an adult in this comic so far. That's not Aunt May.
No, totally. So you can see
Yeah,
why Peter agrees, and Doc Connors is even like, I won't even tell anyone where I got this blood from. I won't say it's yours. I'll just say it was an accident, a freak accident from other experiments I was doing, and this stuff
yeah.
happens all the time.
He's got the sauce.
Yeah. And by the sauce, we mean radioactive spider blood.
I don't even think it's radioactive in this one,
Yeah,
man.
genetically engineered spider blood, I guess, in this
Yeah.
case.
Did you know they said they? I think it was like in the 2000s. They got a spider and they blasted it with theoretically enough radiation for the 616 spider, and they said it does nothing if it bites you.
Yeah.
Damn.
I think it would just kill you, but
Apparently not. It says it's too little radiation
okay.
to like kill you. So it might. Oh, definitely kill the spider though.
Totally, yeah. But then we cut to 2 months later, and Peter, as Spider-Man, is fighting the Punisher, which is
Yeah.
this arc is full of fun cameos and Easter eggs throughout. So that's I got very excited. I was like, oh, he's fighting the Punisher. I mean, we know the
Yeah.
Punisher already showed up in Ultimate Marvel Team Up, but yeah, he's fighting the Punisher, and also because he's between the Punisher and another super criminal that he's trying to protect because he's like, I'm not letting him just shoot people up. It's a really fun fight, and Peter the whole time is thinking like, I really got to pee so bad. I really have to get out of here. And it's really funny because he stops the Punisher and he's like, "Can I take a bathroom break?"
And the Punisher's like, no, and so Peter just kicks his ass.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Punisher has all these toxic fanboys to the point that it's not like a political thing. But like, I just love how like in realistically a fight between Spider-Man and Punisher, like he's not even Peter's big concern. Peter's big concern is taking a whiz.
Yeah, really. No, I mean, I'm not in for like power scaling and what have you and all that other stuff, but at the same time, you got to admit, yeah, the Punisher is just a regular dude. Like Spider-Man does just roll over him.
Yeah, and because I feel like in so many Punisher comics, he's overrated. Like he beats the crap out of all these supervillains, but I'm like, no, but in a realistic comic, which happens quite often, like he fights Spider-Man villains that are like low tier Spider-Man villains, and he has difficulty with them.
Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah.
So there's no way he could beat Spider-Man.
No, but if the writer really likes the Punisher, then the Punisher's gonna find a way to win.
Oh,
You know, that's just gonna happen.
yeah,
That's how it's gonna
yeah.
happen.
I do love. Is that Boomerang or something? There's like this villain, and it goes like, "Hey man, I really thanks for bailing me out. Hey, 20 like I have 20 million in this bag. I'll split it with you if you just swing me out of here too."
Yeah, I think it's just like 20,000. But yeah, he's like, if you get me
Oh,
out of here, I'll give you the money. And it's really funny because Spider-Man honestly considers it for a second. He's like, 20,000, huh? But then they cut to the
and,
next page and it's just the Punisher and this villain webbed up together. And
yeah.
Spider-Man's on the next panel being like, dang, I should have taken the money.
I half expected Peter to take the money and then grab him and like swing him to Rikers.
Yeah. Take the
It's like,
money and take him to jail anyways.
yeah, come on, man! I thought we had a deal.
But during the fight too, he got injured again, got another cut. So of course he goes back to Doc Connors to get patched up, just like the last issue. And it's really funny
Yeah,
seeing 2 months later what the change has been for Kurt because of this research and because of this brand new prospect. Because Connors was telling Peter, I'm at the end of my rope here. This is really important. This could bring me back. And we see that it
yeah.
has as they're checking in, and he looks better. He looks healthier. He's like going to see his son after he talks to Peter. He's getting money for his research from Stark. Things have turned around for him for sure compared to 2 months earlier. And then Peter, there's no time for him to see the experiment because obviously Connors has to see his son. So after Peter leaves, Doc Connors goes and checks in on Ben, who's looking after the experiment. And the issue ends with this horrifying look at what they've created, which is this terrifying
Red
looking, this
fetus.
red fetus. I'm like, that's horrific. It does, and I'm
I
like,
mean,
I don't think Peter would like what he saw there.
well, like, isn't that what you do? It's like in Jurassic Park where like they're with genetic experiments. You're just walking past and there's just a bunch of raptor eggs and fetuses. It's the same thing, right?
I don't think Jurassic Park is a good example of like when experimentation and genetic testing was a good idea.
It worked out. Then there's now islands full of dinosaurs. Isn't that what we all wanted deep down?
Did you watch the movie?
Yeah, and I saw islands full of dinosaurs. I've wanted to see a dinosaur since I was a kid. If that, I say it's a success. Just saying.
I feel like you were just thinking that the entire time and not even paying attention to like the life-threatening scenario that people were in.
Look, man, that's not the fault of the dinosaurs. That's because humans messed up with. That's because like one guy messed with the security system. Okay, it can happen with lions or tigers too,
Or bears.
or bears.
Oh
Oh
my.
my. And I am an expert on bears. All both of us
Oh my gosh, not the bear twink conversation again. I'm not getting into this. Let's move on. So back to the next issue, issue 62, it opens up with Ben Riley going into the lab and he finds the sample, the red fetus, is missing from the tank. And so he's panicked and he's calling Dr. Connors and he's like, I didn't tell anyone about it. I don't know what happened. It was just gone.
Yeah.
And then he hears screaming from down the hall in the university and he
And there's a
follows it.
security guard.
Yeah.
Just sucked. It reminds me, and we're gonna of the. This is actually before the comic, but in the animated series, there was that Carnage series storyline where Carnage was just sucking people dry for Dormammu.
Yeah, because in the 90s show, they couldn't actually show Carnage killing people or any kind of blood or really graphic violence at all. So they
Yeah.
really just had him taking their, I guess, life force or something as a servant of Dormammu, which is
That's
it
that's the same thing as killing someone.
essentially, but you could also return it to them later, which is what happened. So it's like a way of
Yeah.
killing people without killing people.
Look, would you rather die or would you rather have this red monster suck your energy out of you to sell to the devil?
Yeah, it does feel like the same thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. And this one and this comic's making fun of it. Like they definitely have seen the episode, but I don't. But like it's making fun of because like yeah, it's death is sucking people dry.
Yeah, it's more
As
like
far as we know,
they call it vampiric in nature, which it is very much because yeah, like this corpse is like drained of all life. It seems like this cop that's been murdered.
We're also gonna see Carnage do it himself in a few pages.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna say it, but it is the '90s cartoon. He's just shooting his tentacles at people and just draining them of life.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great scene later where Gwen is at the mall just shopping for socks, and she runs
Yeah.
into MJ, who got a job as a waitress at Big Easy Cajun restaurant, I think is what she says. And
oh, I love those Cajun food in the mall, man.
that's not even the right accent.
I messed it up. I was trying to do like a Cajun, the Louisiana.
You better quit while you're behind. You're digging a hole for yourself, man.
I am not worse than Channing Tatum.
I mean, yeah, I feel like a lot of that was bad in a funny way, though, because it's a Deadpool movie.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I mean, yours is also funny, but I'm also worried that you're going to offend and alienate some listeners. Apologies if you are Cajun. Josh meant no offense, I'm sure.
But they have an interesting talk. Gwen says, I'm over. I'm not angry at Spider-Man anymore. If anything, I like him more. And MJ's horrified when she hears that.
Yeah, and it's this really nice moment where Gwen's like, oh, don't worry about me. You have nothing to worry about. I see Peter more as a brother, like my little superhero brother, and you shouldn't worry about that. And it's a nice moment.
She was like, I'm more into girls. And MJ also gives her another look, I think.
Yeah, and she was like, nah, I'm just trolling you, really. She was just teasing her about that.
Yeah, which is ironic because in I forgot which Earth it's called, but the Spider-Gwen MJ is into girls, and it's reversed.
Yeah.
But also Gwen's trolling in this one anyway. But
yeah, it's a very early 2000s joke, because now I'd be like, well, what's wrong with that? If you were into girls, maybe they're not saying there's anything wrong with that in this version, but it is very early 2000s to like joke about like, nah, just kidding.
Yeah.
But it's a nice moment between the two of them, and they have a good discussion too, just generally about Peter being Spider-Man, and there's a lot of worry around that and the danger about it. So it's a good moment for these two to connect, I think.
It's also MJ and Gwen having this genuine friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are very similar in a certain way, the way they're written. Though I do like the idea that MJ is threatened by Gwen.
Yeah.
Which is probably a hint back to, you actually sent me this comic of MJ, and she does have a bit of insecurity about the fact that Gwen was Peter's first love, even though she's dead. And
yeah.
It's a callback to that.
No,
and in
totally.
this one, like, yeah. She's jealous that her boyfriend's living with this really hot girl and she goes like, they're living together. She's not that different of a personality, so.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time together. They're really good friends. Of course, she would have some jealousy there. And of course, she'd be a little worried there. But it's nice to see the two of them connect and bond, and Gwen to reassure, hey, you got nothing to worry about. And then next we see a couple walking down the street, and they see what looks like a child.
Like a baby.
Yeah, like a baby.
It's also like on a dumpster, and I think it's a reference. I don't know how real of a thing this was, but in the 2000s, I definitely remember everyone joking about a dumpster baby, and I had no idea what that was a reference to, and it's probably a joke about that.
Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea.
I feel this is like a very 2000s comic, because the girlfriend goes like, "Oh my gosh, is that a baby? We gotta talk to and rescue it." And it's Carnage.
Yes, Carnage, as the French would say. Oui, oui, Carnage.
Look, now you're making fun of the French.
Yeah, but I can do that.
Cajuns. Whoa. Is it because you're not from Louisiana?
No, I'm not. But, making fun of the French, I'm okay with that.
That's a very 2000s thing, man.
That's a timeless thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Carnage baby basically like reaches out, and it's this scene out of a horror movie, really. It's really well done, where it like first snatches the man with its red tendrils and like pulls it into the alley, and then you see this woman getting grabbed by the legs and pulled into the alley while her fingernails are dragging against the pavement and everything, and she's screaming for help. And then you get to see both of them as the life is drained out of them. And then we get this full page shot of like a fully formed Carnage. This is Ultimate Carnage. And it's very
Yeah.
different. You can see like this version of Carnage, this is an experiment. I mean, so far we know this has come out of experimentation with Peter's blood. We'll get into exactly what that is later, but it's very different than what we get in the original version, and it's an interesting new take on this character.
It also shows that this is like it's maybe not metaphorical, but this is like a darker side of Peter's powers because it literally when it's grabbing the woman, it does like the twip, I think, or
Yeah,
maybe it's a different. But even now later on, it does the twip, which is the same sound the comic signifies when Spider-Man shoots his webs out.
yeah,
But the other thing that's really interesting is that like I was talking about this earlier, but Carnage really is so Cletus Cassidy, as Nabeel said, is a serial killer in the original comics who gets the symbiote. But Carnage really does work as a serial killer, monster in the shadows thing,
yeah,
and I feel like that is what makes Carnage, if even in non-Spider-Man context, such a fun villain, is that he does have this horror movie quality to it that you could do. Like,
yeah.
I would totally read a Punisher story where he is like being hunted by Carnage, or like a non-Spider-Man character just being horrified at like the idea of Carnage just hunting them.
Yeah, and it's even more horrifying in a sense seeing this genetic experiment that's not even really human take on a life of its own and become this horror movie serial killer.
Yeah, it's
But
also a reference to Cletus Cassidy because even without Cletus, this Carnage is just a serial
yeah,
killer.
either way, yeah, you're getting a
Yeah,
serial killer out of this.
yeah.
And
And it grabs and drains him like in the 2000s cartoon.
yeah, even worse.
Yeah, yeah,
And then Connors, of course, arrives on ESU campus and sees the police investigating, so he knows something is up. He and Ben kind of exchange looks when he sees him. What's also cool is you get to see Carnage's point of view, where there's no dialogue or anything. All the panels are blank. You don't need any words to see what's going on because you see Carnage and then you see this point of view where you look at Carnage's hands and then you see in Carnage's mind it's got Spider-Man's hands. He also sees MJ from Peter's perspective. He can see he has all of Peter's memories, and there's this gorgeous double page spread that Mark Bagley does of pretty much all of Peter's core memories and all the people he's met and everything that he's done. And so you can tell this creature is trying to figure out who or what it is, but it identifies a lot with Peter Parker. And so, of course, the next logical step is he remembers where Peter's house is and swings across town to the Parker house. And it's bad timing. Like you were saying at the beginning of this episode, Josh, this has a lot of the Clone Saga elements to it because in a way this is some kind of like warped clone of Peter and
yeah.
who like shares a lot of memories and of course the DNA of Peter.
It has like a darker version of his powers.
Yeah, exactly. This like warped
The
dark mirror of Spider-Man.
I kind of forgot, but the in Spider-Man the Enemy series, the Carnage was also involved in the Clone Saga because Spider Carnage was Spider-Man, Spider-Verse, and Clone Saga.
Yeah, no, exactly. In
Yeah,
the series finale of the 90s show about
yeah.
how in that universe I think it was Peter learned that he was actually the clone and Ben Reilly was the original and he went insane and bonded with the Carnage symbiote.
It's funny. This is like very much a. I feel this is like a weird love letter to the animated series. I don't know how purposeful it is, but it feels like a love letter to the original show.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be a coincidence. I didn't see that too much, but I think what I love about both Ultimate Spider-Man the comic and the 90s Spider-Man cartoon is that they both are classic Spider-Man stories that carry a lot of key elements to the character to it. So they have, of course, so much in common because they share the same DNA. Speaking of DNA.
Yeah. Hey.
But of course, the timing's so bad because Gwen is arriving at the Parker house and she forgot her key, which I'm pretty sure in any horror movie that's like a death sentence, really. And she
hmm
can't make her way in the house. And then, of course, outside, she is confronted by Carnage, who like emerges from the shadows with these horrible yellow glowing eyes, emerges, and there's this terrifying sequence of Carnage just brutally murdering Gwen and like just draining the life from her. And
Yeah.
what's interesting too is that Carnage forms like a kind of human face after a bit, but we'll see more of that later. But the issue just ends with this full page spread of Gwen's lifeless hand sticking out. And it's terrifying. It's definitely a new take on and an homage to the death of Gwen Stacy in the original comics. I mean, they did that fake out during one of the Green Goblin storylines where MJ was tossed from a bridge like Gwen in the original comics, and it seemed like she died, but she didn't. But in this one, we get a new take on this is actually Gwen dying for real.
It's also interesting because Gwen hates Spider-Man. Right when she recovers from her hatred of Spider-Man, she's killed by a perversion of Spider-Man, like a literal clone of Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's tragic. And like just
Yeah.
when she found out Peter's secret, and just when she and MJ were getting along, and just when things were going so well for all of them, and of course, then this happens and she's murdered. And so it's terrible and it's horrifying and it raises the stakes for sure for this Carnage.
Yeah.
Things are getting very real from this point on.
It's also the thing where Spider-Man's life comes into theirs and hurts him. But this is the first time, like, if it wasn't for Spider-Man, even though this is like more tangential and more adjacent, like if it wasn't for Spider-Man existing, she wouldn't have died.
Yeah, which is really
Because this is
sad to think
literally,
about. And you can tell that's
yeah,
going to
it's
weigh on Peter.
yeah.
But the next issue, of course, arrives. And like we said, things get more intense and sadder as Aunt May arrives home. And she's the first one to discover when she looks out the window and she sees Gwen's corpse. And she goes out. And of course, she's just horrified and distraught over the whole thing and breaking down in tears. And which is, it's even sadder for Aunt May because this is just adding another person to the list of people that she's lost in her life. It's
I think
devastating.
she literally says, "Not another one."
Yeah. I mean, she's lost so many people now. And not only that, in her mind, I'm sure she's failed to protect Gwen, a child put in her care. And then we have Peter as the Daily Bugle, and he has no idea what's going on. At this point, he's just happy to see J. Jonah Jameson finally covering Spider Man in a more positive light. He's in a good mood, things are going well.
And then he gets a phone call.
Yeah, he gets the call from Aunt May, and you don't get to hear what Aunt May's saying, but you know what she's saying on the other line, and you see his reaction in real time, panel by panel, as he hears the news, and you see his face just sink, and you see him just go completely into a downward spiral. And you can tell how intense it is because he immediately swings home, and he swings home so fast he doesn't even change to his Spider-Man outfit, which is a
He's
huge
wearing
risk.
his little kid suit.
Yeah, he's wearing his little kid suit and tie that he wears to the Bugle, but he's swinging around the city. He had no time to change. He didn't care about his secret identity in this moment. He's just going home as fast as he can. And in front of the house, it's this whole circus. It's this zoo of police lights and yellow caution tape and police cars and people in front of the house, neighbors, and everyone's talking. And Peter's wading his way through the crowd.
Aunt May hugs him and tries to tell him what's going to go on. One big thing is that the police are grab him. They're like, "Is she your girlfriend? Were you guys having a relationship? Where were you?" And Aunt May steps in and says, like, "He's a kid. They're friends. He was at work. Back
Yeah.
off."
No, literally, because the police are trying to interrogate them hard. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
did you have a fight with Gwen? Were you the last one to see her alive? And it's cool that Aunt May like takes a stand and is tough and is like, hey, leave him alone. Like, why are you just badgering this poor kid? And I think this has a lot of influence. Ultimate Aunt May, I think, has a lot of influence on a lot of later media adaptations for Aunt May. Especially, I think, if
Yeah.
you look at Sally Field's version in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, Marissa Tomei in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
It reminds me
Yeah.
of In No Way Home at the beginning when they're getting interrogated by the police and she's not having any of it. And she's like, I want to see Peter right now.
You know, she's also like Marissa Tomei's age in this one.
Yeah, she
Like,
is younger
yeah.
than like original comic version Aunt May.
I'm really tired of people going, the Aunt May in Tom Holland movies is like too young. And I'm like, no, it makes sense. She's like 50.
Yeah.
She's almost 60.
I mean, I get they make too many comments about her being super hot or whatever, and that gets annoying. But
Yeah.
she was still not too young. It's not like she was in her 20s or 30s or something.
Yeah. Also, fun fact: I don't know why Marisa Tomei is also the mom in King of Staten Island,
I,
and no one complains about her being too young there. So just saying.
yeah, well, no one complains
Yeah.
because they're not comic book fans watching that movie. We will complain about so many things.
Comics about the stupidest things. I am a comic book fan, and I will complain about the stupidest things. But some of the stupidest things, I'm like, even that's too stupid for me.
Yeah, same.
Fuck.
I hear you. Yeah, I'll
Yeah. Fuck.
complain about a lot of things, but some things I'm like, okay, now we're just complaining to complain. But then in the comic later, Captain DeWolf arrives because Gwen's murder is similar to a lot of other cases that have been happening across the city.
And they point out that like this is the dead captain's daughter.
Yeah, no, that's true. So a
Yeah.
lot of the cops are talking about it, and Peter overhears this discussion, and apparently they think, oh, this could be a mutant, or that also like it's a pretty vampiric killing, and everyone's like, vampiric, what?
How else do you describe someone like having no life force? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way they could have done it. Again, things are super intense because you get this silent page of Peter just looking into his backpack and just angrily like ripping it open, and he looks in and to show his Spider-Man outfit. So like it's a really good demonstration of like visually just how angry, distraught, like grief-stricken he is. And Aunt May also has this scene where she calls someone on the phone trying to reach Gwen's mom, who just ditched her a while ago, and
Uh,
gets pissed off as this person because Gwen's mom is nowhere to be found, is ridiculously unavailable, and the person is being uncooperative. And she's like, yeah, she's screaming, yeah, tell her daughter's dead, you idiot. It's a really emotional moment, and it's also very cathartic because, yeah, this is a big deal. Her mom just sounds like she sucks.
yeah.
But then Peter and May go to stay with MJ and her mom just across the street.
Yeah. Who just kicked out the dad and wouldn't let Peter and MJ sleep in the same room.
Right, because they're teenagers dating. So, like,
What are they gonna do?
they're teenagers.
Teenagers don't do crap. They're good kids, Nabeel.
Oh, all of a sudden you've changed your tune. I feel
They're
like
good kids and they're not horn dogs.
whatever you say. But
He's a
they
twink.
even talk about like, oh, it's so dumb how we're not able to stay in the same room. But MJ's really cool about it because she's also like, oh, I hid your costume in this nightstand here, and there's this conversation where she's like, is this Spider-Man related? And I think this story is really cool for a reason that like Peter doesn't really know. I feel like this is the first time in a while where Peter's totally in the dark about like what happened and why and what's been going on. So the reader gets an idea of what this is and what the problem is, but it's an interesting twist that Peter just doesn't even know. I think that adds a lot to the confusion and to the grief and to the stress of the situation for him. He just
Yeah.
has no idea what to do or what's going on or why. And he feels so guilty over this because he feels like somehow he brought this on Gwen and he brought this into her life. And so there's this a very sad moment where he just breaks down and cries with MJ just holding him.
I personally get really tired of like I'm not against the idea of Peter always crying and breaking down about I'm gonna give up being Spider-Man. Because we were reading this all at once, years down the line when it was all released.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. This guy, canonically, this guy's young, but also like everything within the Ultimate Spider-Man timeline so far has happened within like 1 or 2 years. It's intense.
Yeah, it's a
It's a lot of
lot.
pressure for this young lad.
Yeah, especially for someone who's like 16 years old. It's a lot for him to
Mm-hmm.
go through. It's a lot for him to
Yeah,
experience and in such a short amount of time.
yeah. And then, but he resolves to like, I want to figure what's going on, and you get like the classic detective mode where he goes like mutant, vampire,
Yeah,
like
and like this double page spread of him piecing it together for his stuff. Like, there's bits and pieces of what he heard from the detectives, and also in his head, people he's encountered, supervillains, monsters, mutants that he's encountered, and who could have done this. And you see a lot of his old villains. You also see Wolverine when the word mutant is mentioned, and they have met before, to be fair. But I'm like, it's a little racist there, buddy. First mutant you think of, and you're like, yeah, it could have been him. I'm like, all right.
well, of all the mutants he met, Wolverine is the most violent so
I mean,
far.
he is a likely candidate. That's for I. That's fair. Blade 2
Yeah.
comes up because of the vampire thing.
Oh, why is that one racist?
Oh, just because he's a vampire and they said it looked vampiric, they're like,
Yeah, that's different.
I don't think so. I think
Vampires.
he's generalizing a
Why?
bit here.
You are okay. It's okay to hunt vampires. It's a respectable career. They're evil. They're creatures of pure evil.
And Blade is a vampire hunter. So
Exactly.
why would it have been Blade?
Maybe he lost it. It's like the SNL skit where he goes like, "He just don't got God.
I don't know
He
what
don't
you're
mess around.
talking about, but okay.
He just
Anyways,
lost it one day, and he ate Gwen and a few cops."
yeah, I feel like that's the argument for both Blade and Wolverine here, because I'm like, why would they just kill a random girl like Gwen? That doesn't make sense.
I mean, I could kind of see with Wolverine. I'll be kind of honest. With Ultimate Wolverine, he's kind of a creep.
Yeah, he's unhinged. It could have been him. Ultimate Wolverine is a trip. But
Just
then he has a revelation about Doc Connors because then he pictures the lizard and he's like, Dr. Connors. And it's convenient timing because at the same time, he sees Doc Connors across the street just in front of his house. And there's this crazy scene where Peter really loses it and he just sees red and he angrily just starts attacking Dr. Connors, and the doctor is pleading for him to stop. You really get to see Peter just unleash his rage and see him kind of just unhinged because he's in such a bad state.
so Spider-Man is never like a killer usually. In fact, Stan Lee actually says Spider-Man will never. Peter Parker cannot lift Thor's hammer because he cannot kill. Spider-Man actually does get kind of bloodthirsty in this and the next few issues, though.
Yeah.
He does actually threaten to kill Connors a few times.
I think a lot of the best Spider-Man stories too are him getting pushed to the brink and testing his limits and seeing how far he can get pushed before he comes very close to snapping. And I think that's a very human reaction to things, and seeing him stop himself and pull back before he crosses any real lines. But you know he's close because he's getting put through the ringer. Of course he is close. It's understandable. It's human. Luckily, he stops, though, and sees reason, and Dr. Connors explains. So Carnage was really created because Connors spliced his own DNA with Peter's, and then he also used a lot of Peter's dad's research and work, the one that created Venom, and all this together created Carnage. And he had no idea what really happened because he wasn't even there when the creature escaped. All he knows is that the creature's out and it's loose. And by the end, then Peter's also disgusted by this. He's like, you used my DNA to create that?
And he goes, "You stole my dad's research?" And I'll be honest, I'm kind of on Kurt's side here. I don't think he intended anything bad. He literally is just doing a medical experiment.
He had the best of intentions, but you know what they say about the road to hell, you know?
Yeah, like I don't think he did anything morally wrong. Is my thing. He didn't steal anything. He didn't take this without permission. He said, "I'm gonna do medical experiments," and this is the medical experiment.
Yeah.
It's not that different from what we're trying to like do now in labs where we're trying to grow organs. This guy was just growing organs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the most ethical way that it's been done so far in Ultimate Marvel, but at a certain point, I'm like, maybe these guys are going to learn their lesson about tampering with DNA and genetics. Maybe.
We're doing that now, like in real life.
Yeah, I know, but we also don't have genetically engineered spider blood at our disposal.
We are trying to do that with elephants.
We'll get back to that. But
Hey, someone's gonna in like a documentary in 75 years. Someone's gonna pull this footage as like elephant people just have taken over Canada or something.
the issue ends though after Peter is filled in by Doc Connors about what's happening, is that Carnage confronts them in the front yard.
Yeah.
And that sets the stage for the final battle, which takes place in issue 64. And Peter's like, hey, what can this thing do? Like, what am I up against? And Connors is like, I have no idea. This has evolved way past my knowledge and way past what I've seen.
Yeah. This wasn't even supposed to be like alive.
No, yeah. It's gone out of control.
It's just supposed to be something that grows organs and you could like take it out of, you know?
Yeah, but like this thing starts morphing into like kind of a humanoid form like it did earlier
Mm-hmm.
when it created kind of a face for itself, and it
Mm-hmm.
keeps trying to talk. This creature's getting closer and closer to almost gaining like full sentience, really. So Peter gets into a big fight with Carnage, and it's another fun case of Peter just fighting in his PJs, no Spider-Man suit. He's just going at it. He's just like, fuck it, we ball. And he's like, all right, Connor's like, I'm going to fight this thing and I'm going to lead it to your lab, and you better have a way to kill it when we get there. Otherwise, I'm just going to lock you two in a room together. Which I'm like, God damn, that's vicious,
Yeah,
Peter.
Peter's angry. Angry
Yeah.
little boy right here.
And it's also explained it's 4 a.m. Peter is monologuing internally about how he's so tired. He's just like fighting to survive. And he's also feeling a lot of internal guilt over this whole situation about how this is his legacy as Spider Man. This was done with his DNA. This is what he's going to leave behind in the world, is this like vicious killer that kills also like his loved ones.
It's also really interesting because in 616, we get Cable and he sees Spider Man and goes like, "Oh, this is the guy who's gonna be known as the greatest of all the superheroes one day."
Yeah. But
And that's like, and that's generally accepted as like, oh, in comics where they go into the future, that like everyone just accepts that in the future Spider-Man will just be the greatest of all the superheroes. And here we're getting a Spider-Man that's like, my greatest legacy is I just created a monster. Is his fear?
yeah. But also he's so young, and he at this point doesn't see the bigger picture, and he doesn't see what his legacy will be, because not to get into spoilers, but like ultimate Peter Parker especially does have a pretty big legacy and a very good legacy. And I think the thing
Yeah.
about Spider-Man is because he's just a kid, he doesn't really see all the good he's doing because he's worried about so many different things. He's got a huge guilt complex. He's always dealing with one stress after another. I don't think he realizes just how good he is and how fundamentally like heroic he is and how inspiring that is, and all the people he's saved and all the good things he's done. Right now all he's
Plus,
thinking about are all the mistakes he's made, all the people he's lost.
and to be fair, he's only been Spider-Man for 2 years. He's done a lot of damage because he's just figuring things out.
Yeah.
And also, to be fair, a lot of people who do great things are remembered not for the great things. Herbert Hoover's remembered as the greatest humanitarian in history. Yeah, he's considered the greatest humanitarian in history, but we all go like, oh, he's the guy who let people starve to death during the Great Depression. That's his legacy.
Yeah,
So you never know.
that's fair.
Yeah. Spider-Man goes, but does think this isn't alive. I gotta kill it before it kills more people. So he actually grabs it, throws it down the building, and he goes like, "It's over." It smashes into a cop car, gets up, and kills two cops.
Yeah, it's this big public fight where like the creature murders two cops, and it's revealed that because this thing is draining life form, it's kind of like repairing its own damaged DNA, and so it morphs
Yeah,
into what looks like Richard Parker, Peter's father.
yeah. Because it's a clone. It has like a bit of it's Richard Parker's, it's Peter's DNA, Richard's research,
Hmm.
and also like the damage is Peter. He doesn't have like the super suit that he does in the MCU or in the later comics in 616. Uh, but he's just throwing it around. He's trying to just kill it by throwing it.
Yeah,
The cops shoot him multiple times before they punch him and kills him. And also the cops do reveal that they have like the perfect time to get the best donuts.
yeah. I mean, that's before Carnage shows up, but yes.
Yes.
But then Connors, we see, gets back to his lab, and when he returns, he's jump scared because Peter shows up. And we get kind of this non-linear look and explanation of like how exactly Peter survived and like stopped and destroyed Carnage, because it like then flashes back to after Carnage like morphed into what looked like Richard Parker, and Peter just went full on survival mode, he said, and he explains that Carnage like was trying to rebuild itself because it was based off of Peter's DNA matrix, but it was damaged, so like feeding off people healed it, and he realized like it was after his DNA, and it was either him or the creature. So he takes the creature to these giant smokestacks, these tall towers, and drops it inside.
Those are Con Edison towers, man.
I sure.
I work in I work in the utility field, and Peter just throws it into some perfectly good stuff that I would probably have to get inspect myself.
Yeah, you'd have to clean that up.
I know, no, that's someone else's job, but I don't have to go there and check it out.
Yeah. What an
Fuck
inconvenience
you,
for
Peter.
you. Yeah.
I know.
Making you do your job.
I I mean, don't face it that way. That makes me sound lazy.
I mean, yeah, just really making you go out of your way. Really making
Yeah,
life difficult for you.
I know. I have to go there. I have to write a report, and then and then walk back to my office and back to my nap.
It's so inconvenient. What a
I
hassle.
know. I know. Fun fact: those stack towers for utilities are only mostly in New York City,
Oh,
not
okay.
in a lot of other cities. Yeah, there's steam. So it goes back how in the 616, one way sometimes they say to hurt a symbiote is extreme heat, and this is as extreme as it could go. I guess is
Yeah.
steam.
No, that's true. That is a big weakness for the symbiotes in the main universe is it's sonic vibrations and also fire or heat. So
Yeah, yeah.
fun little nod to
So
that. He just burns the creature.
I also say if this doesn't kill it, you just like contaminated possibly the power or the water supply. I will say that, Peter. If this didn't work, you just possibly damn the entire city.
Good thing
Just
it
saying.
worked.
We don't know if it worked. You never checked. Yes, we never see a body, as they say in comics.
You never know. But hey, as far as we know, it's destroyed. And Peter in the present is just starts ranting and raving at Connors just for doing this whole thing, and he's upset and he's screaming at Connors because he's like, "You killed Gwen," and Doc Connors is so guilty that he just turns himself into the police for
Yeah.
this. And back at MJ's place, she finds Peter just sitting in bed, like shirtless, and he's all damaged and scarred, of course, and everything from the battle. And he's like, I caught Gwen's killer. And he explains he's done. And there's a big splash page of Peter's face saying no more, saying he's just done being Spider-Man, which at the beginning of the episode I said this was a bunch of different storylines in one. This is also
Oh
the
yeah.
Spider-Man no more storyline right here. This is a big
Yeah.
nod to that. So,
But we don't get the Spider-Man costume in the trash yet, unfortunately.
I mean, it's been done so many
Yeah.
times. Like
I remember though when the second movie first came out, all the commercials had like I could tell, maybe I misremember, but Toby goes like Spider-Man no more. He says it so iconically,
yeah,
and that's all I'm thinking when he says no more.
no more,
Which I guess
man.
also came around 2004. Both of them came out around this time.
Yeah,
So.
this was around the same time as Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
also featuring the Spider-Man no more storyline.
Yeah. I think one problem with like the comics and Marvel in general is that, especially recently, we try to syncretize as much of their stuff with the TV show and the movies,
Mm-hmm.
and people always hate it now because this one feels like they jam so much stuff into this arc, but it does work out. Like I don't see any major problems with doing so much stuff with this arc.
Yeah, I think
It
it
does
works.
work out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it doesn't
as
feel like what it feels like the main storyline is Carnage, and that has
yeah,
elements of the Clone Saga to it because it has its own spin on things. The death of Gwen Stacy also fits in there because that's part of that larger story, and as a consequence, that leads into it feels natural. It feels like its own story that also happens to have nods to and references to classic storylines that long-term fans will appreciate. And
yeah,
so I feel like everyone wins there. If you're not familiar with the original Spider-Man comics, you don't feel left out by them doing that. But if you do know, then it's like a fun little reward for you and a little treat of like, oh, that's cool. Like they're able to
yeah,
tell their own story, but still leave something in for the longtime fans.
yeah. We then get the Empire State University. Also, like I don't know. I know Empire State University is in 616. I don't know what it's supposed to be. Is it like CUNY?
It's
Is it
basically like
Columbia?
NYU. I don't know.
Like in the movies, they use the Columbia
They
campus.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um.
we go there and Ben Riley shows up to the lab and he finds the
There's.
police are there.
That's not fair. I don't think Kirk Connors actually. This is me being serious. I don't think Kirk Connors actually did anything wrong. and it's made worse by the fact that a lot of characters from Shield have done worse, and they have not gotten in trouble.
I mean, yeah, but he also is not part of a top secret government organization that can just cover up their mistakes. And also, this was an event that led to multiple deaths because of his experiment gone wrong. And so he can at least be charged with like negligence. He has
But
liability there.
okay, that's fair. But like, it's maybe negligence, but like, look, so we grow organs in real life. Like that is a thing that people do.
Yeah,
Like,
but they don't kill
but
people.
yeah, okay, but like, let's just say I'm a doctor. I go, hey, I grew some organs in the lab. I'm gonna go home for the night, and we find out the organs became a person and shanked someone in an alley. Like, would you arrest me for that? Because that's literally what happened in this
It's
thing.
your
It's like,
responsibility. You grew it.
how the fuck am I supposed to like imagine this horrifying thing happens? Because like we grow organs now. No one would go like expects them to suddenly
This was
get
no
out of the lab.
ordinary like thing that he grew. This was like a very extraordinary creature that he created from it's like Frankenstein's monster. There was no
I
precedent for it. Like in that
so,
case, yeah, you should be more careful, at least when it
you
comes to
know
this thing breaking out and like going around killing
no
people.
there's no way for him to know that was going to happen. So he based off this research that would become the Venom symbiote. But the problem with that, and it's revealed to Peter's like, you stole my dad's research, and he goes like, yeah, I didn't steal it. I had it because I knew the guy. But like, no, he didn't know it would turn into Venom because no one told him it turns. The research is about Venom. Like after they beat Venom, they should have told like Shield or whatever, hey, you do this research, it turns into a monster. He didn't know that. Like this is very unfair. I'm just saying.
I
He's like as
he's got
Peter
to take
said, this guy,
responsibility for his work and
as
what it
Peter
did.
said, is the only scientist so far, mad scientist in this comic that has like purely good attention. He goes like, yeah, I want to regrow organs and like fight diabetes and Alzheimer's, and we go like, yeah, man, so go to jail while like the Shield guys are trying to create weapons, get to keep making weapons and giving Doctor Octopus money.
It is a double standard, but at the same time, like, neither case is right. They should both be held accountable for sure. But the issue ends with Ben sneaking a sample of Peter's blood out with him. I'm excited to see where that goes because that's not going to end well. The next issue and the final issue we're talking about is Ultimate Spider Man 65, which is a very cool self contained epilogue issue to this arc that deals with a lot of the emotional aftermath. And it's cool because it focuses on Peter and his friends. It opens with them all in detention, Breakfast Club style. Peter, MJ, Flash, Liz, Kong, they're all sitting there in detention. And this issue is very well done because I think it does what all the best Spider Man stories do, and it focuses on character, and it focuses on his supporting cast and Peter Parker himself. It starts off and they're in detention. We don't know why they're there exactly, but Flash and MJ are arguing about like whose fault it is because Flash blames MJ and MJ blames Flash, and you get a flashback to the day before where Peter and MJ are cleaning out Gwen's locker, and there's a sweet moment where they find a picture of like Peter, Gwen, and MJ from the day they all skipped school together in Ultimate Marvel Team Up, and
Yeah,
it's very sentimental and sweet, going like, "Oh, she did love us." And Liz is there asking what they're doing, and then of course Flash shows up, and he's just like an asshole, and he's like, "Oh, who gets her stuff?" And then he's like, "Oh, good job, like looking after her, Parker." And so MJ just snaps, and MJ just like jumps on Flash from behind and starts attacking him. And of course, he falls on top of Kong. It's this like crazy, ridiculous scene. Then Peter and Liz are trying to like pull MJ off of Flash. And then when this happens, then Peter accidentally like elbows one of the teachers in the face, and then there's this silence of like, oh no.
yeah,
So that cuts to them back in the present in detention, and MJ tries to get, to her credit, very real with Flash despite everything, and
yeah,
she's like, why are you like this? Why are
yeah,
you acting like a jerk all the time? And then she's like, oh, wait a minute, you liked Gwen. And when I read that, I was like, oh, he's just like Josh for real.
In what way?
He liked Gwen.
I ship Gwen with Peter. I don't ship her with myself, especially because she's a high school student.
All right. Well, you're beating the allegations today. Good move.
I have no idea how she deduces it, but she goes like, "Oh, that's why you've been nice to Peter and you've been asking how he's doing. Is you've been trying to find a way to get him to talk to Gwen for you."
Yeah, literally. That was the big secret subplot going on for a while. Was
That's
Flash trying to talk to Peter and ask him something, and it turns out it was because he wanted to ask for advice on asking Gwen out.
yeah. I was like, well, maybe the first thing is like be nice to her like roommate, but
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
but
Just
also,
be a nice person. Yeah.
but I also like thought like, oh, maybe this was a good character arc of like Flash is learning to become a better person. We know Kong definitely is. We've been getting hints of it
Mm-hmm.
for a bit. But of course, Flash is a dick, and I also have no idea how MJ deduces that. So
Yeah, I think somehow she pieces it all together, but who knows? Flash then immediately storms off angrily after MJ deduces all this, and it cuts to 3 hours later, and they're like, well, I guess he's not coming back. It's a fun subversion of your expectations in terms of, oh, this is going to be a Breakfast Club type scene where there's a big breakdown and an emotional confession, but he just gets pissed and leaves. And MJ's like, I thought we were going to have a moment. I don't know. I didn't realize he was just going to leave and never come back.
what's the word? I have never seen The Breakfast Club. I've
Oh,
seen bits of it.
I'd recommend it. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I know it's a classic.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where like Peter just also tells like, hey Kong, like have you considered just Flash is not a good person?
Yeah, because Kong's like trying to defend him. He's like, oh, he's not such a bad guy. And
To be fair, 616 Flash is not a bad guy because he does grow up.
yeah, 616 Flash is a huge turnaround and a huge redemption, and he becomes like a hero in so many senses
Yeah.
of the word.
Yeah.
When you look at his service in the military and so many good stories that came out of that, along with him becoming Agent Venom, which is a really
And
cool storyline.
him being friends with Peter to the point that when he was having issues, he actually one of the first people he calls is Peter at one point.
Yeah, I think he's even Peter's best man at like his wedding.
Yeah, I mean he's the only best friend that other than Johnny that like doesn't consistently die. So
yeah, that's true. Harry's a little iffy sometimes, but he can count on Flash at least. They actually, in the main universe, become very good friends, and it's interesting to see how they grow from that. Because they are with each other in 616, they're the only ones who are consistently there through high school, college, and then into adulthood with each other.
Yeah.
For better or worse, they are actually really good friends.
Yeah. I think for better, like, I don't see the downside of this. I think it shows Peter has his great heart, his willing to forgive, while Flash, and, like, a lot of us grow. Like, he is a character that, like, grows.
Yeah, and he changes and becomes a better person.
Yeah. And also, he doesn't, like, go crazy or turn into a... Actually, he does turn into a monster if you think Agent Flash is technically a monster.
Technically, yeah. But he never really loses control. I think the interesting thing about Flash bonding with the Venom symbiote and becoming Agent Venom is it's a good time that he spends bonding with the Venom symbiote and, like, teaching it to be better and, like, helping it become good, in a sense, which it never really had before.
Isn't it now canon that the Venom symbiote is evil because it was on Deadpool first and it went crazy because it was on Deadpool?
I mean, I don't really buy a lot of what happens in Deadpool comics as canon because a lot of it is just a joke and meta humor, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, Kong is trying to defend Flash in this comic, and then Peter is so upset and so enraged that he goes on a long rant about how people like Flash get to become successful and powerful, and greedy, evil, selfish men get to rule the world because nobody ever stops them and people just enable them their whole lives. And he's telling Kong, he just like is friends with you just so he can feel better about himself, and like good people like Gwen or Harry, they don't get to be happy, and like this is the reason why most of our parents aren't even alive. Kong's like, well, what about you? And he's like, I'm nothing. And then it's so dramatic, and MJ's like, what about Spider-Man? Peter's frozen for a second,
and he runs off.
Yeah, he just bolts, and then MJ runs after him, and Kong's like, so are we just allowed to leave detention? Because everyone's been running out. MJ chases Peter up to the roof, and he also goes on a whole spiel of guilt and like just self-loathing where he goes about how he's failed and he wanted to make a difference, but he doesn't feel like he is, and like he's not making a
Yeah.
difference at all. And all he can do is watch these horrible things happen, and he can't even protect those closest to him, which is just classic Spider-Man. It's classic Parker guilt. He's always holding the weight of the world on his shoulders.
This is a deep dive for a comic, but Robert Caro, the writer, has once said, "Power doesn't corrupt; it just reveals who you are deep down." And there's so much issues in comics and Ultimate so far where like people get power and they're irresponsible with it. But Peter, with power, he actually becomes more responsible.
Yeah. And it really weighs on him a lot, and it really drives him into some dark places sometimes. But he's still a good person and trying to do the right thing, as difficult as that may be sometimes, like this, and as powerless as he may feel to stop a lot of the evil that's happening in the world, because he is just one guy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
MJ even tells him, like, hey, a lot of these bad things you're talking about, you couldn't have done anything about it. Like, you weren't there for something like this, and like you didn't have the ability to stop it, but he still feels that responsibility because the power he has and the responsibility, it's constantly weighing on him. He always feels like he could be or should be doing more.
It's when he has great power, he doesn't go greedy with it. He just realizes it comes with great responsibility, and he embraces that.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't want to.
Yeah. Even when he feels like, oh, this doesn't work in my best interest, and oh, I would rather be with MJ or going to the party, or I would rather be doing this to better my career, or I would rather be at home studying. I know I need to do this because it's my responsibility. And if I don't act, something bad is going to happen. And that's going to be on me.
Which is why some of the retcons are really painful, because now we know Spider-Man doomed all of the universe to Mephisto eventually taking it over by selling his marriage to the devil to Mephisto.
Don't get me started on One More Day.
No, because it also reveals that like Spider-Man's greatest legacy potentially in 616 is that he damned the whole world to be run by Mephisto at one point.
Anyways, One More Day tangents aside, MJ is trying to comfort Peter, and she's like, hey, things are going to get better because of people like you. And then Peter's like, well, then we're all doomed. So he doesn't buy it. He doesn't believe in his own abilities and himself enough. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier of like, he has a positive legacy, and Peter does do so many good things, but he can't even see it. But of course, other people like MJ can see it.
Except in 616.
Except in 616, but for reasons that we will not get into at the moment. But bonus episode.
We should do
on One More Day.
We should do that for Valentine's Day.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to
that. There's also always that scene where he gives up, he sees a mugging, and he just kicks the mugger's asses. This time wearing a bandana over his mouth.
Yeah, he sees a woman this time getting mugged in an alley below, and he puts on a makeshift mask and beats them up, and it's very intense. And he gives the muggers this hardcore speech about like, you have to. It's a very Bendis speech where he kind of repeats a lot of the same stuff over and over again, but it is very raw and very real. If you don't do something right now, you're going to kill someone, you're going to get killed, you have to change because you're not getting any second chances. It's very hardcore. Like, you can tell he's still in a bad place. And he like yells at them, and he gets them to apologize to the woman, and then they run off. And then, of course, the woman hugs him and thanks him and is so happy that he stopped the mugging. To me, I immediately got a call back to the original Spider-Man No More story in Amazing Spider-Man number 50, when he stopped being Spider-Man for a bit, and then he sees a man, like, you know, getting beaten up by muggers, and then he saves him. And this guy reminds him of Uncle Ben, and then he remembers why he does this and why he's Spider-Man, because he failed to act, and because of that, Uncle Ben is dead. So it inspires him to become Spider-Man again. So I was so excited to see a similar scene, but this ends very differently, because then he like runs off after he saves the woman, and he seems even more upset that he did that. on the roof, he was like, why did I do that? And he says, the last thing he says and the last thing in this issue is, I'm sorry, Gwen. So it looks like he's still determined not to be Spider-Man anymore, even though he still has this compulsion and this need to save people.
Carnage was created from his need to save people. He wanted to help Kirk Connors cure diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say reminds me of him, of Uncle Ben, reminds me of that skit on, I think it's Solid JJ's the name, where Spider-Man meets his alternate self and goes like, it's what Uncle Ben told us. And they're like, Uncle Ben never told us. And I was like, before he got killed by the mugger. And they're like, oh no, we all stopped that guy.
Yeah. Love Solid
really
JJ.
Yeah, it really is the theme of 616 because of all the retcons now being technically the worst Spider-Man.
Rip. Maybe one day I'll be able to read mainstream Amazing Spider-Man again. Who knows?
I have. None of it's bad so far. Every once in a while I read it again.
It has ups and downs, but it's been more downs than ups in the past few years.
Even Jackpot was fun. It was fun to read.
Oh, that wasn't fun. That was lame.
You read it?
No, I didn't read it.
I read it. It was fun.
Whatever you say. Hey, if you enjoyed it, more power to you. Could not do it.
As I read it, and though I also felt weird because like Paul's like cucking. It's just like, it is like a little weird when because they're like, it's a weird comic. I'll say that it's a fun comic, but it's like a weird setting, if that makes sense. Because it's like it comes to the face of like Peter and MJ's breakup and Paul.
Well, hey, all new Venom is great.
Oh, I've heard. Yeah, you told me. I need to check it out.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Anyways, but that concludes this storyline.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on these issues, Josh? Anything you want to say?
I really like this. It was a lot of jamming in, but I think along with Ultimate Fantastic Four, the first few arcs of that, this has actually been my favorite Ultimate Marvel. I think this is my favorite Ultimate Spider-Man arc so far. I've read ahead, obviously, so there's a few more I like a bit more, but this is my favorite. It's a lot of it harkens back to the original. You keep the same essence, but it changes in a lot. It's the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff that's changed the most.
Yeah.
So.
No, I really liked it too. I think it provides like an interesting new take, really cool new take on Carnage. I love what they do with Doc Connors here and Peter and the consequences of their actions. I mean, I've said pretty much all I needed to say, really. Like, I just love how it's this solid, like, intense, upping the ante kind of Spider-Man story that reminds you, oh, this is not a game. This is very real for Spider-Man and his cast of characters. No one is safe, and there are serious consequences for your actions. And I'm interested to see going forward how Peter and everyone like deals with this and how he suits up and becomes Spider-Man again, because this is a big blow, and it was a devastating arc for him. He really went through the ringer.
It's a bigger blow than Beast's death, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like Beast was like, he was getting on my nerves to the last few issues, which I know, and I'm like, yeah, fuck that guy. I'm glad he dies. They're like, oh, we needed the Hank McCroy memorial, and I'm like, yeah, but like with Gwen, we were getting right when she's finding peace with everything, you just kill her. Like it hurts.
It hurts. It's
shocking.
The loss of Gwen really hurts because Ultimate Gwen Stacy was such a great character, and I think so many people really like that. I really love that character in that version.
Oh, I love that character, and there was just so much going on, and it shows like no one is safe. With Beast, they killed him off as an afterthought, really.
Yeah, when Beast died, I was like, wait, really? He's dead? They actually did that? That didn't feel as big as it should have. I don't know.
Yeah. With Beast dying, I'm like, I was almost like, I was getting annoyed with that guy anyway.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's dead.
Okay, let's move on. Out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, any other thoughts, Josh?
Nope.
Well, there you have it. In the meantime, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, you can email us. Josh, what's our email again?
Our email is ultimatecomicspodcast@gmail.com. Remember, that's comics plural, podcast singular, so ultimatecomicspodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. And we also have so much social media. So we have Instagram at Ultimate Comics Podcast. We have our YouTube channel at Ultimate Comics Podcast. And we are on TikTok, also, unsurprisingly, at Ultimate Comics Podcast. So check out all our social media. We post so many clips from the show. We have a lot of fun images on our Instagram. We have a lot of fun stories we post on Instagram and polls, and it's a very good time. And honestly, once again, write into us at our email because we would love to hear from you guys and what you think, and maybe we could read someone's email on the show and respond to some reader mail. That would be a really fun time.
Yeah. We love hearing from our fans.
Yes, thank you for everyone who listens and for all your support. Next time, we will be back with more Ultimate Spider-Man. We're going to be covering issues 66 through 71. So I'm excited to pick back up where we left off next time. Until then, take care, everyone, and make mine Ultimate Marvel. Bye-bye.